minister is mostly, not in the pulpit, but we fill in as, worship leaders. We have guest ministers come. We're doing all singing version one week. Reverend Meg will be back in early August. I know everybody liked her. So I want to thank Tara Stevenson, who found this service in the UUA Worship Web from 2019 by Karishma Gottfried. The UUA Worship Web, which is where most of this comes from, has fabulous things. I wish I could write this well. And it's called The 5 Jagged Rocks of Unitarian Universalism. So in the Bible, there's a pretty well-known story about David and Goliath. Goliath, a huge warrior from the side of the Philistines, challenged someone from the side of the Israelites to battle. David was chosen, and he knew that even with all the armor in the world, he'd not be able to win against Goliath by strength alone. So he took his staff and picked up 5 smooth stones and put them in his bag along with a sling. As he approached Goliath, David took the stones and slung them at Goliath, striking him on the forehead and knocking him over. As Unitarian Universalists, we rely heavily on the teachings of our parent traditions, Judaism and Christianity, interpreting their stories through an open-minded perspective, seeking universal meaning in those ancient texts. In the centuries in which our faith has expanded outside the boundaries of traditional Judeo-Christianity, we've also expanded what we draw our inspirations from. Universalism is now sometimes interpreted to mean that we draw a universal meaning from all religious traditions. As Reverend Leslie Takahashi says, they teach us to believe in the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will, but life embraces multiple truths, speaks of bonds of and. We draw many of our rituals from paganism, focusing on how to embody our faith, live fully as our best selves, and respect the earth and her people. Buddhism teaches us to be mindful, disciplined, and present in the moment, focusing on our actions and intentions to make the world better. Feminist and liberal theologies from various religious traditions remind us that we are a prophetic faith. We are not complacent in the face of change, but rather pushing forward beyond our comfort to challenge the status quo and our role in oppression. What about Unitarian Universalism? What did we believe? A connection that we miss a lot of the times when we draw from other religions is how those truths connect to our truths. So how can the story of David and Goliath, a story from one of many sacred texts, be interpreted in Unitarian Universalism? James Luther Adams, a Unitarian minister and 20th century theologian, used the story of David and Goliath and the 5 smooth stones that David carried to articulate 5 smooth stones of the liberal religious tradition. The beliefs about what it means to practice faith in a responsible, progressive way, because although as far as religion goes, we are for sure in the minority, but we can still have a big impact on the world. But UUism isn't the only liberal religion, and many beliefs that we hold are also held by many. Where does our theology lie? What can we point to when asked not only what we believe, but what is the bedrock of our faith? And I share a lot of the postings on Facebook, and people ask me that all the time. As the title of the sermon suggests, there are some rocks that we can base our faith on. The 5 Jagged Rocks are an adaptation of James Luther Adams' smooth stones. They were created by Reverends Nancy Bowen and Mike Moran, who wanted something that could be built on the 7 principles, but focus even more on a declaration of our faith. Instead of the smooth stones created by Adams, they chose to recognize a faith that is dangerous and not always smooth going, according to Reverend Gretchen Haley. So our stones are jagged because we aren't perfect. theologically or otherwise. We're rough around the edges, but that doesn't make us any less valid. The first of the 5 jagged rocks, although there isn't necessarily any kind of order, is the belief that there is a unity that makes us one. Simply put, we believe that everything is connected. This rock gives us freedom to express our theology. Some might call that connection God, or the spirit of life, or the mystery of the universe. As our 4th principle guides us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, our 3rd reminds us that all faith discoveries are aided by acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. The 2nd jagged rock is that all souls are sacred and worthy. This is reflective of our 1st principle, the affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But it focuses more on each something greater than simply intrinsic ethical goodness. You may have heard Thomas Starr King's well-known quip, "Universalists believe God is too good to damn people. Unitarians believe they are too good to be damned." This rock signals that our sacredness and worth are tied to something greater than each individual. We don't focus on whether someone is damned or divine because it doesn't matter where they're going. It matters that they're here. When we talk about all souls being sacred and worthy, it's truly a radical statement. When we proclaim that people are sacred just for being alive, when we don't focus on the color of their skin or the immigration status, don't think about who they love or who they are and how they move, just state that they are sacred and worthy. We are living into our theology as Unitarian Universalists. The 3rd jagged rock, courageous love transforms the world, is deeper and wider than just love. When the Beatles say all you need is love, they're talking about courageous love. UUs do their very best to side with love, and that's what makes all the difference. Even though we've fallen short many, many times, we Unitarian Universalists keep trying. We get up again and again on the side of love. We are a justice-seeking faith, always reaching for that beloved community. How do we create beloved community? With love, with courageous love. Not love for the oppressed or hated or hatred, because as much as we have to recognize that all souls are sacred and worthy, it's hard to think about that when they refuse to recognize the sacred and worthiness of my soul or yours. It's much more important to focus on loving each other, loving the promise of our shared liberation, because that's what's going to transform the world. The 4th rock is the knowledge that truth continues to be revealed. Our revelation is not sealed. What we believe as a faith community has changed throughout history and will continue to change. Ours is one of the most transformative faiths because instead of being defined as one set creed, we are defined by how we choose to be in covenant with each other. And that covenant can change and will change and has changed over time. Our principles, one of the most formative parts of Unitarian Universalism, were only adopted in 1960. In fact, the 7th principle about the interdependent web of existence was only adopted in 1985. And science, one of our 6 sources, teaches us that we always have more to learn about life, the universe, and ourselves. As species, we are always discovering, always adjusting our hypotheses, and changing our realities. That is true for what we know of ourselves and the world, so why should it not be true for our faith? Freedom and tolerance have been central to our tradition, at least since the Reformation. But we can wonder if the many famous Unitarian and Universalists we claim as our ancestors would claim us too. If they made it through the service, they'd certainly be shocked to learn at coffee hour that a solid proportion of the congregation here don't even believe in God. But so is the journey of our faith, ever changing, ever growing. As Universalist Edward Markham wrote, he drew a circle to shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. As the Unitarian and Universalist merger showed us, our faith and its beliefs are appealing to many. If we can keep growing our circle, which is so important at this point in time, catching those at the margins and holding them close, revealing truth as we discover it, our love and our faith can only get stronger. Salvation in this life, this comes from our Universalist roots. And it might be the most radical jagged rock of them all. While most other faiths believe in an afterlife, as Unitarian Universalists as a whole, we understand that no one belief is guaranteed to be true. Each person can have their own truth, but what's more important to us than what happens after we die is how we live. Maybe we go to heaven, or are reborn, or cease to exist. Maybe our fate is predetermined. Or maybe our actions add up to determine whether we make it into the good place. But what can we do now? What can we do to make the world a better place, not because of some future reward, but because our lives now depend on it? Because our liberation is tied up in one another's, because we are connected, and when one of us is in pain, we are all in pain, because none of us are free until all of us are free. There is no salvation for us in this life unless it is for all of us. We have to gather that light together. That is the promise of beloved community. In 1790, when the Universalist Convention in Philadelphia adopted an anti-slavery resolution proposed by Benjamin Rush, who signed the Declaration of Independence, they were fighting for salvation in this life. When American Unitarians traveled to Europe and risked their lives to help Jews and other refugees escape the Nazis, they were fighting for salvation in this life. When Reverend James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo were killed in Selma after traveling there for the civil rights movement, they were fighting for salvation in this life. And today, as Unitarian Universalist congregations around the country vote to provide sanctuary for undocumented immigrants, as UUs travel to the southern border to protest and bear witness, we are fighting for salvation in this life. Reverend Sophia Bentecourt reminds us, we are in control of what we do with our daily living. If we, each one of us, represent a missing remnant in the fabric of our collective future, then together we can lean into the possibility that we have yet to fully experience in human history a collective wholeness and unassailable good. So immerse yourself unapologetically in what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist in these days. Then go into the world and live knowing that your faith matters. There have been many, many times in our history and today where we have not done the right thing, where we have forgotten about what we are all working towards. But Unitarian Universalist minister Theodore Parker said it best when he said, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends towards justice." And it bends that way because there are people who are bending it towards justice because it is our duty to help heal the world, to fight for salvation in this life. We are a community of thinkers and seekers. We are heretics, the word coming from the Greek to choose. We have chosen how we want to be in relationship with each other, what we draw our wisdom from, and what we believe through our 7 principles, our 6 sources, and now our 5 jagged rocks. We are a radical, liberal, and theologically rich faith. And like David with his smooth stones, bending his sling toward Goliath, we will use our jagged rocks to bend the arc of universe towards justice.